Yeah, it's pretty muddy and nasty out. Weather seems to have cleared up. So the question today is, where are we with this saw? I've had several tanks of fuel through it now, and I'm curious about its compression. And it's kind of developed a strange rattle, and I'm not sure if it's internal or the clutch. It's not something like it's catastrophic, like a crank or a bearing. It's almost like something tin. So I'm going to fire it up and get it warmed up and see if I can identify what that is. And almost like something inside the muffler, that kind of a thing. It might have a loose, maybe that's what it is. I should think about that first. Maybe it's the heat shield. Maybe the muffler's loose. I'll go check those bolts. But either way, I was going to pull the bar off and take a look inside and just see where things are. And done a couple of projects with it. It's been noodling, lots and lots of noodle time. And it works pretty good. I mean, it runs. It's not going to run like a 572, but for, $350, I guess that's about what I have into it now. It's hard to beat, really. And try to answer the question why you do something like this. Well, it's because I can. It's a challenge. I'm angling for a blown up 562 next. There's one on Facebook Marketplace. If I can nail it down, for like $100 or something like that. So that would be the next project, and that's really the definition of what's driving me, is having things that are interesting to do. And each of these projects gives me a reason to do a video and chat about it and start documenting the basics on these things. And that's really what it's about for me now. When I first started this channel, it was about archiving the lifestyle for my kids and grandkids. And it really hasn't changed that much. But now my kids are up and grown and they have their own families, and the grandkids are out there. They're not quite as interested in this kind of thing. So my focus has changed a little bit, just simply because now it's about just living the lifestyle and the people in my world who appreciate this kind of thing. And I don't know if this knowledge is going to stay around. It seems to me that it will, because there's just lots and lots of channels out there now, and that's a good thing to me, because it's archiving the knowledge for future generations. And a lot of the people who've got channels like this now, they either have their own family or developing it, or like me, or grandparents. So I find that heartening, I guess is the right word. So back to the reason why. Well, just add layers of experience, put it on video, and because it's fun. I like tinkering with stuff. And that's an underdog, and I guess that's the other reason. The 562 is an underdog because of the reputation they've had over the years. So proving that they can cut wood and be functional and going through the steps and talking about basics are all reasons for me to do a video. Esoteric stuff like that. But anyway, back to this saw. Where are we at? It is now a functional work saw, and now we're into the how long will it last phase. And before I do any more modifications, I want to break in and prove its worth. And if it does those things, maybe it's a template to work from to do more extensive modifications, or maybe I just get another one, or maybe, like I just said, I'll vector off onto the 562 and forget all about these. But for the time being, it's cutting firewood and being useful, and it is that template we can build from and talk about. So we continue. I think first things first, let me get it fired up and see if I can identify where the rattle is. Now, it's been sitting outside actually. It's been cold. So this is a worst case scenario. It's when I just come off the throttle. Frequency wise, it could be piston, but I don't think so. I think it's something else. So we're going to pull the bar off and just take a look. It doesn't seem to affect the way it runs, so I'm not going to be worried too much about it. It's just something I noticed. And the other thing I noticed is it didn't happen cold. It took a little bit for it to get there. It had to warm up some. And that does point to things like oil and stuff like that. Because usually the piston swells. Either way, it's not going to stop me from running. I'm just darn curious. Alright, now we're at 12.69. I don't know if that'll show up or not. So that's better. That plug was showing a little bit on the rich side, so maybe this will bring it down to a nicer tan. I'm not really hearing that rattle I thought I heard. I'm going to try it again, see if I can hear it. Yeah, you can hear it, but it's only at that 1 RPM level. It doesn't do it at idle, and it doesn't do it at RPM. It's almost like there's a resonance in there somewhere. So I'm going to pull things apart a little bit and just see. I don't think it's harmful. I just hear it. So I'm damn curious. So we've kind of retuned it. Got the RPMs up. I guess it's about time. Now you got to understand that a standard 372 from that time period, the original editions, their no load rev for tuning purposes with a 13.5, so I'm a full 1,000 RPMs off what an OEM 372 of that time period would do. So, and I guess I'm really not totally surprised. It could be everything from ignition to just the way the cylinder is, being an aftermarket, not quite OEM specs. But, and I'm not really going to try to get it to the 13.5 either. You know, that's not what this is about. I'd probably have to go in there and put a degree wheel on that cylinder and see what it's doing. But the one thing I do know I don't have to do is ignition timing, and that was one of my original premises that was going to be a problem. I think the ignition timing is fine, and the other reason I'm not going to mess with it is because if my speculation is correct, my compression is now up around 140, and it's an easy starter on the restarts. Now, obviously, cold it was a little bit off, but I think the tune was a little bit off as well. I will eventually get that saw to a 3 or 4 pull starter cold. That's the goal. Of course, the other thing was I'd run out of fuel, so I was starting it cold and empty. But until I really see a reason to mess around the ignition timing, it's just one variable I don't want to mess with until I have gone through the other variables. One of the mistakes you can make when you're trying to sort a saw out is make multiple changes simultaneously. Then you don't really know which one is one that made a difference. So the 2 changes I've made that I think have made the most difference to me was obviously the carburetor. That was huge because it now idles and does things at lower RPMs it didn't do before. But also compression. The compression is, I think, made a big difference on how it runs. It doesn't stall, doesn't do any of those things. It just runs. So without further ado, I'm going to check the compression now. Now remember, before I checked it cold. Cold numbers are usually a little bit higher than warm numbers. But if I'm in the 140 range now, I'm a happy dude. I'm just going to leave the top end alone at that point. Just start beginning to get into how long does it last. That phase of the evaluation. All right, let's do this. I find it interesting. One of the commentary I got on one of the videos is how come no one's made a stink about how long and how big the hose is to my compression gauge. And I guess, believe it or not, there is some legitimacy to that because air is a compressible fluid. But basically, when you're doing the compression test, it's just like an air pump. So I guess my question back would be, if you've got an air pump that's capable of doing, say, 115 pounds of pressure, whether it's sitting on a 50-gallon tank or a 100-gallon tank, is it going to make any less pressure? Just let you think about that one for a second. But I would also be tempted on this saw to get rid of the decomp and just plug it and see if that doesn't give me a little bit of compression increase. Because I have a sneaking suspicion that my decomp is not sealing well. Anyway, let's go ahead. Pressure now. Oh wow. Take a look at that number there. So we're past 140. That's huge. Let me get my glasses on and make sure I got it. Yeah, we're about 145. Yeah, we're at 145, pushing 148. So we went from 130 to 120 when we first got the saw to 135. Then after about, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 tanks of fuel, we're now around 148 pounds. And that to me is thoroughly adequate, which means I really don't have to do any more to that top end. Really don't. I think at this point I just need to run it. So I'm going to pull the cover and check cylinder bolts. And I found the muffler bolts were a little bit loose, but they shouldn't create a rattle. I think it's just the piston in there. But also notice that I pulled that air filter and there's nothing down in there. That air filter is doing its job. So they work. I'm a little curious to fire it up right now and see if we pick up a bunch of RPMs. By the way, the answer was yes. Picked up about 200 RPMs with the filter off. That tells you something. I've been saying that about these saws and ones like it for a long time. A lot of these are just simply undercarbureted. Now, like I said, a stock original edition, a stock original edition 372 would be at 13.5 right now. Now, it could be the ignition timing. My guess is probably not the ignition timing, but it could be. We might explore that a little later. My guess is just simply the quality of the ports in the cylinder, and the port timing is off a little bit. That would be my guess, based on what I've seen in the past. And just check these. See where you're at with these here. That's tight. That's tight. Yeah, they did not loosen up. Yeah, they're good. Yeah, that decomp is leaking. I'm losing a little bit of compression right there. Oh, just so you can get a look-see. It's got the metal bracket there, which I happen to like. One thing I want to make sure is I'm getting the full throttle. Yeah, I'm getting a full throttle. I've seen some of those where it doesn't get the full throttle, but this one does. Yeah, there's no leakage around the base gasket. That 1184 does its job, has for years and years. I don't think I've ever had a 1184 goo gasket fail, ever. For that matter, it's been the opposite. It's been almost too good, because when I have to take them apart, they are just absolutely glued on. Been my experience. And when I was first messing around with that stuff, I tried some other different products, you know, like the stuff you get from the auto parts stores, and they did fail. So the Free Bond product and all its variations and different customers and different, you know, companies' labels, like Yamaha Bond, Honda Bond, stuff like that, is definitely better than the other products you can buy at the auto parts store. Yeah, I think this saw is actually becoming useful. I say that another thing I want to point out is trying to compare that to a 372, you know, a real one. I think that misses the point. I think what you need to do is compare it to other saws in that price range. It doesn't really matter if it's a Husqvarna product or a Steel product or even a clone. And I mean, that saw as compared to the G395s, they're different leak saws, you know what I'm saying? Price-wise, they're only different by about 50 bucks. I think the discussion isn't about raw performance, it's about what you need and how does it fit into that performance envelope of what you need for that kind of money. So, yeah, if you're going to try to spend $300 and get the fastest and most powerful saw you can buy, you go for a G395 or the clone 660, right? But if you're looking for something of this weight class for $300, that's what you got to compare it to. What could you spend, you know, or say $350 on this weight class and have that kind of performance? And I'm not sure you can. I think this bang per buck pretty much beats it, but you got to put time into it. Kind of wet out here, and I still have a bunch of tops down. If you look through the woods, you can see them. And I pick through them over time. I'll have them all cleaned up. Might take me a year or two. That's what I've done for the last 25 years is I'll take them down and I'll leave them kind of like that, and they don't degrade quite as fast. And then I try to get to them within 2 years, 2.5 years. And I burn a lot of wood, so I usually get to most of them. I now have a guy who buys the top, so I'm going to have to be a little more productive getting them up and out of there. But today's operation is running that saw here. So I'm blending the cleanup to getting some firewood to heat the house with the channel and running that saw. You know, so it's really come around, so that's part of what I'm doing here. But kind of on that subject, I was talking about what's the saw designed to do and what are you getting for your money with a saw in the performance envelope that you need. This is perfect for a saw like this, even a smaller one. And what do you get for 300 bucks that can make this kind of job combination of fun, productive, you know, bang per buck for the money. Yeah, you could use a battery saw and get most of this done, but it's as much fun as running something like this. And when you mix the fun factor with the challenge of making it work, which is fun for me, along with the practicality of needing to get firewood, this saw works pretty well. I mean, there's other saws that work good too, but I don't see the sense in burning up a expensive chain and putting more time on my 572 when I can accomplish the same thing with a whole lot less investment, I guess is the point. It's a blend of practicality and fun. And I'm curious to see how it runs. I don't know if I articulated it well, but that saw came pretty poor performance due to a compression sitting around 120. Now it's sitting up around 145, pushing 150. I think it's 148 is what I measured it at this morning. And so we'll put another tank through it. Get a load of firewood, possibly 2 or 3. The weather's okay, right? Temperature's perfect for me. So this is a perfect time to come out and run a saw. You know, I'll see what I can get out of this top. Yeah, I tried lowering the idle a little bit. I lowered it too much. What happens is you get down to a point where the ignition stops firing on these, especially the aftermarket ones. My thing is I've gotten used to the newer X-Torque ignitions, and they make spark like at 800 RPM, something really low like that. But these, they don't. They just shut right off. So I got to raise it up a little bit. about all I can reach. See if I got a load here. I think I do. And this is what I'm going to burn tonight. This stuff right here.